What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Historic Hot Laps. I'm your host, Alex Daniels. We're going to kick it off with some Daytona recaps. We've got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We had testing over at Indy, a few news things, and a history segment like always. But let's kick it off with Daytona. And we didn't cover RCR in our team breakdown last week, and here we are with a great performance by that team. So let's kick it off with pole day. The Super Speedway solo runs. Speedweek kicked off, trademark single car qualifying session for the Daytona 500, and Kyle Busch, back to the RCR, which we didn't even cover last week, seized the pole with a blistering lap of 49 seconds flat, basically 49.006, but about 183.5 miles an hour, marking his first Daytona 500 pole after never having won the race itself. He lined up alongside with Chase Briscoe on the front row, giving fans an intriguing contrast of experience and youth for the Sunday showdown. There's plenty of drama even before Sunday, though. William Byron had to switch to a backup car after damage in qualifying. Even so, he vowed to chase an unprecedented third straight Daytona title. And that was quite the storyline going into it, right? Was he going to have it, get the third win in a row, set a record for NASCAR? But let's move into the duels, right? So race 1, race 2, rather than exhibitions, the dual races feel like more of miniature versions of the 500 to me. You've got some hard racing, some lineup stakes going on there, and high drama. Race 1 was pretty chaotic as Joey Logano took the win for Team Penske, earning inside row starting spot, but not without incident, with a mid-race wreck involving Bubba Wallace, Austin Dillon, Chris Buescher, William Byron, and Chandler Smith, which brought out a late caution and had crews scrambling on setups. Race 2 was almost the opposite. Super clean and super strategic. Chase Elliott claimed the victory for duel number 2 for Hendrick Motorsports. Caution-free race, followed closely by Carson Hocevar and Kyle Larson in that number 5 Chevrolet. The finish cemented several key starting spots for the Great American Race. There's also a couple stories in the open cars. Drivers like Casey Mears and Anthony Alfredo battled their way into the 500 field thanks to strong dual results, but Alfredo had an issue after tech inspection and was DQ'd, which was super unfortunate for him and that team. This brings us to Saturday action, so let's kick it off with the ARCA race. And actually, we're kind of skipping over Truck Series, but I want to cover ARCA first, so let's talk about Saturday. In the early afternoon on Saturday, ARCA Menard Series kicked off its season with the General Tire 200. Gio Ruggiero scored the win in overtime, holding off Jake Bowman by just 0.142 seconds. It was Ruggiero's first ARCA victory and a huge moment for Joe Gibbs Racing's development program, especially important given the drafting challenges young drivers face at the super speedways. Now it's back up to the night before for the Truck Series race. Friday night saw the Farm Fresh Florida, Fresh from Florida 250, whatever it is, the Craftsman Truck Series opener, and you had veteran truck ace Chandler Smith stole the show in dramatic overtime finish, making 4-wide charge to take the checkered flag. Gio Ruggiero reinforced his Daytona speed again with a runner-up finish there, while Christian Eckes rounded out the podium. Talking about the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series now, and we'll probably struggle this name after years of Xfinity. We're going to struggle for a while, but the United Rentals 300, another super speedway dominating race from Austin Hill, from pole to finish, leading 78 of the 120 laps in, fending off Justin Allgaier and Ryan Sieg for the win. Hill's super speedway skill were on full display, and it gave his O'Reilly Series championship aspirations momentum heading into the season. Honestly, RCR at super speedways, especially in that series, is just always fun to watch, and he's definitely the guy to beat. So let's move over to Sunday, which was the Great American Race. The green flag dropped for the Daytona 500. The race became a test of patience, strategy, and luck. Early stage battles saw teams jockeying for position and drafting partners. In Stage 1, Zane Smith and Austin Cindric flexed out front, while veteran racers like Ryan Blaney and Carson Hocevar put themselves in the mix. Come Stage 2, Bubba Wallace flashed his speed by leading the most laps at 40 and winning the second stage, only to be shuffled back later on. With just a handful of laps left in Stage 2, major wrecks broke out, including a massive chain reaction involving Denny Hamlin and Justin Allgaier. That took out a chunk of the contenders and opened the door for a frantic final segment. So let's talk about the final laps and the last lap win. On the final lap, Carson Hocevar briefly led the race before getting spun. Chase Elliott looked poised for his first Daytona 500 win, but emerging from the wreck behind them, Tyler Reddick made a last-grab surge on the backstretch, had a great push from his teammate. He passed Elliott and scooted ahead for the win, leading only one lap, but the most important one to take victory. This is Reddick's 9th career Cup win, his first since 2024, though, and the first Daytona 500 victory for 23XI Racing. which we all know is co-owned by Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin. The emotional victory came just days before Jordan's 63rd birthday, and also the first race post the legal drama we covered all through December, right? So pretty wild that it finished up that way and that it did what it did. Reddick's top 10 finishers included Ricky Stenhouse Jr. coming in second, Joey Logano third, Chase Elliott in fourth, Brad Keselowski in fifth, Zane Smith in sixth, Chris Buescher in seventh, Riley Herbst in eighth, Josh Berry ninth, and Bubba Wallace 10th. And for many fans and teams, it was a feel-good conclusion to the Speed Week. Mix of veteran grit, rising talent, heartbreaks, historic milestones, and just a high-energy weekend, right? It always is to kick off the season. So pretty awesome to see all that. Congrats to 23XI and the team over there for their very first Daytona win. And, man, the emotions are running high, right? All right, so we go from Daytona 500 to some IndyCar testing. We had IndyCar testing at Phoenix this week. So let's take a closer look at what went down in Avondale, Arizona over the past 2 days. IndyCar's UNSER IndyCar Open Test at Phoenix Raceway wrapped up on Wednesday, giving teams and drivers their first real taste of the 1 mile tri-oval ahead of the Good Ranchers 250, which is set for March 7th. This year's test was full of top-end speed, rookie learning curves, weather interruptions, and even late session crashes. Exactly the kind of storylines and preview for a great competitive season over there. So that being said, let's kick it off with day one. The first day of testing on Tuesday belonged to David Malukas. In his first official running since joining Team Penske, Malukas clocked the fastest lap of the session with a 172-mile-an-hour effort in that number 12 Verizon Chevrolet. It was a strong start, not just for Malukas personally, but for his new team after a challenging 2025 season. He edged out fellow Penske driver Joseph Newgarden, who had topped much of the early running at the track, and Will Power, who was running his first laps with Andretti Global following a long career at Penske. However, rookies also made some noise. Calais had a moment in turn 4 wall, but was cleared by medical staff and returned to the garage uninjured. A timely reminder that short ovals demand respect even in test conditions, and that number 4 AJ Foyt Racing entry will need a little repair. So day 2, we had some weather roll in, but the second and final day was defined by one name, and one name alone, Alexander Rossi. In both the morning and afternoon sessions, Rossi led the overall speed chart in his Ed Carpenter Racing Chevrolet, topping the combined timesheets for the best lap of 0.6254 seconds, which is roughly 174.5 miles an hour. That's a meaningful jump in speed from day 1, and with all 25 confirmed 2026 entries on track, it showed that ECR brought a strong baseline to Phoenix. Rossi's teammate, Christian Rasmussen, also impressed, finishing high on the charts behind him, hinting that the team could be more competitive on the short ovals this year. Other familiar frontrunners from testing included Newgarden, Palou, who was the fastest Honda runner, Pato O'Ward, Kyle Kirkwood, Scott Dixon, and Marcus Armstrong, all posting laps in the upper tiers of speed. Testing wasn't perfect, but it was valuable. As the afternoon approached, rain showers moved into the Phoenix area, stopping the cars on track and cutting into valuable running time. That, combined with some breezy conditions, made the second day feel like a real simulation of unpredictable race weekend conditions. Across the 2 days, drivers logged nearly 4,900 laps, a massive amount of running on track that IndyCar hasn't raced on in over 8 seasons. It gave everyone just a feel for handling, tire grip, and drafting at this unique track, where lines of momentum are everything. Across the 2 days, we learned a lot of stuff. We had some rookie crashes. Even in test session, there's going to be drama, right? Veteran Marcus Ericsson had a hard moment in the final session with his Andretti Global Honda broke loose entering turn 4. Slammed the wall. He walked away under his own power, but the incident ended his running early, a small reminder that even test miles take focus and respect. And while rookies often struggle to find their feet at unknown oval, Mick Schumacher continued his steep learning curve. He was the fastest rookie on day 2, turning 171 miles an hour and logging over 200 laps. Valuable education ahead of his first oval race and his first oval weekend in a new car for him. So what this means moving forward is Rossi and ECR look fast and composed on the 1 mile oval. Team Penske is showing strong speed with Malukas leading the way in his new Chevrolet. Honda runners like Palou and Dixon remain in the hunt. Rookies like Schumacher and Calais are getting meaningful seat time. The weather and handling nuances showed that Phoenix will be unpredictable when race weekend arrives, especially in the spring. With the Good Ranchers 250 coming up in just a few weeks at the same track, these 2 days were more than just practice. They were spring training for the season's first oval showdown. And if any part of this test hinted at the season ahead, it's that IndyCar's tight field and evolving dynamics will make for an exciting return to short oval racing. Wrapping that up, that's pretty exciting. Hopefully, we'll see some of this speed come to fruition on race weekend, and that the teams really got some valuable information out of all these sessions, right? That moves us into some news. So let's talk about IndyCar since we just wrapped up a little bit of the testing stuff. We'll kick it off with some major engine news out of the NDT IndyCar series. And yes, it's big for both present and future of the sport. IndyCar has officially reached a multi-year agreement with Honda and Chevrolet to continue supplying engines well beyond the end of the current contract in 2026. That takes a lot of uncertainty off the table, especially for fans wondering whether Honda might step away amid the rising costs and changing technical landscape, right? Both factories will stick through the upcoming rule changes and will play a central role in developing the new powertrain package that's set to debut with the 2028 car. That's a hybrid 2.4-liter twin-turbo V6 replacing today's 2.2 liters. And having both manufacturers locked in means continuity for teams as the series transitions into that next era with the new car. One interesting twist, though, IndyCar is giving each manufacturer their own charter starting in 2028. Those charters operate much like team franchises, so Honda and Chevy can field their own full season entry if they want. Exactly how that will play out is still kind of up in the air, but it is a unique way to deepen their involvement and give them some stake, right, in the growth of the series just beyond selling engines. Bottom line, the long-standing engine rivalry between Honda and Chevy, which is a defining feature of IndyCar for the last decade, isn't going anywhere soon. And with both companies helping shape the next-gen power plant, the series keeps momentum heading into the biggest technical shift in years. Honda and Chevrolet sticking around, that's definitely some stability. It's good news, keeps the lights on and the rivalry alive. But let's be honest, 2 manufacturers is stable, 3 manufacturers is momentum. IndyCar wants a third OEM at the table. It's going to take more than an open invitation and a rule book. It's going to take real value proposition. So here's what this looks like on my end, right? So lower the barrier to entry without lowering the standard. Right now, joining IndyCar as an engine supplier is expensive. You're not just building the power unit, you're supporting multiple teams, engineering, integration, trackside personnel, development, reliability programs, marketing activation, tens of millions of dollars per year, right? For a third manufacturer to jump in, IndyCar needs to control its costs in a meaningful way. The upcoming 2.4-liter hybrid era helps, but the series has to limit open development areas, cap certain R&D expenses, standardize more of the hybrid components, guarantee a reasonable return window on investment. OEMs don't enter racing programs on a win. They need financial predictability. If the business case isn't clear, it's a non-starter. They also need to create a clear marketing payoff. Manufacturers race to sell cars. That's the reality of it. IndyCar has a strong racing credibility, but its national footprint still needs a lot of growth. A third OEM will want stronger TV ratings for consistency, more mainstream exposure, digital growth that reaches younger buyers, a clear North American marketing strategy. If brands like Hyundai, Toyota, Ford, or even luxury marques were evaluating IndyCar, they'd ask one simple question: does this platform help us move a product? And the answer definitely needs to be a confident yes, not a, well, in the future, or if we grow a little bit of here or whatever, right? So give them something unique. Why choose IndyCar over IMSA, over Formula E, over NASCAR? IndyCar's pitch has to be specific. The Indianapolis 500 is one of the biggest single-day sporting events in the world. The racing product is competitive and unpredictable. Costs are lower than Formula One by a massive margin. North America relevance is pretty strong. The series has to package that all way better than they do. A third OEM needs a clear identity hook. Maybe that's hybrid innovation. Maybe it's sustainable fuels. Maybe it's American market performance branding. Whatever it is, it needs to feel forward-looking, right? Guarantee a competitive balance, so no manufacturer wants to show up and get steamrolled for 3 years. IndyCar does a good job with parity. That's one of its strengths. But any new OEM would want a fair timing for a ramp-up period, technical collaboration during initial integration, rule stability. If the first season becomes an embarrassment, the plug gets pulled pretty quickly, right? The series has to protect that third entrant early on. So that leads to the question, why does a third manufacturer matter for us? Well, because perception matters. 2 engine suppliers feel steady, 3 feels healthy. It creates more technical storylines, more engineering diversity, more potential team alignments, more sponsor interest. It also adds leverage. If one OEM decides to walk, the entire grid isn't staring into uncertainty. And from a fan standpoint, it's simple. More competitive series is better. More competition equals better. So imagine 3 distinct engine sounds, 3 development philosophies, 3 marketing campaigns fighting for relevance. That creates headlines. Headlines grow sport. Reality check, though, is this is not going to be easy. Global manufacturers are cautious right now. Electrification strategies are shifting. Motorsports budgets are under scrutiny. IndyCar isn't competing just against other racing series. It's competing against internal corporate priorities. but that doesn't mean the door's closed. If the series can show financial discipline, grow an audience, and position the 2028 hybrid platform as modern and relevant, a third OEM becomes more realistic instead of a hypothetical. And when that happens, it won't just be another logo in the paddock. It'll be a signal that IndyCar isn't just stable, but it's actually growing. And that's really what we all want to see, right, as IndyCar fans. So a little long-winded, but I think that's what we need for a third manufacturer, and hopefully we can see something come in the next couple of years for that. All right, let's shift over just a little bit, talk about Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson signing a contract extension with Hendrick Motorsports isn't just paperwork, it's a statement. The number 5 team isn't resetting anytime soon. The championship window is still wide open, and most importantly, it says Hendrick knows exactly who its centerpiece is. So we've got a contract extension for Kyle Larson. Since arriving at Hendrick in 2021, Larson hasn't just won races, he's won big ones. He's dominated weekends, he's delivered a championship. That kind of performance changes how an organization builds around a driver. Instead of searching for potential, you double down on certainty, right? For Hendrick Motorsports, this extension locks in its stability. The team already has talent across the board, but Larson is a driver who can flip a race on its head, give him clean air and he's gone, give him adversity, and he's usually finding his way back to the front anyway. When you have that kind of weapon in the garage, you structure everything around maximizing it. It also simplifies the long-term picture for Rick Hendrick and company. Sponsorship conversations become easier, engineering decisions become clearer, development programs have been defined, benchmark for that team. The number 5 team isn't just competitive, it's foundational. There's also another layer to this. In today's NASCAR landscape, driver movement can shake the entire grid. One big name shifting teams sets off a domino effect. By extending Larson, Hendrick prevents that instability before it starts. Rivals don't get a shot at him. Rumors don't go anywhere or gain any traction. The focus stays on performance. For Larson, it means something too. He's in the equipment that he can win in every single week. He's in a shop that trusts him. He has a crew chemistry that doesn't need rebuilding. That kind of continuity matters, especially when championships are decided by the smallest margins over there. The message from this deal is simple. Hendrick Motorsports isn't rebuilding, it's reinforcing. They believe their best years with Kyle Larson aren't behind them. And judging by the speed of the number 5 and what they continue to show, that belief isn't based on hope, it's based on results. So exciting to see that Kyle Larson isn't going anywhere, sticking around with Hendrick for the time being. Long-term contract extensions are Hendrick's thing lately. Byron's also wrapped up for quite a while, so you're going to see a lot of good out of there. While we're on the NASCAR subject, let's talk about Jimmy Johnson for a sec. This one feels a little different. Jimmy Johnson has announced that he will officially retire from NASCAR competition following next year's Daytona 500 there in 2027. And if that sentence hits you a little hard, you're not alone, because whether you loved him, rooted against him, or just respected the dominance, Jimmy Johnson defined an era in NASCAR. We're talking 7 championships, 5 straight from 2006 to 2010, 80-plus Cup Series wins. An entire generation of drivers measured themselves against that number 48. And now we know when it's going to end, right? Daytona 2027. There's something fitting about ending it there. Daytona is where legacies begin. It's the biggest stage in stock car racing. It's chaos, tradition, pressure, history all wrapped into one afternoon. If you're going to close the book, that's the place to do it for sure. As we've seen this last weekend, it's got a momentum of its own. Johnson already stepped away from full-time racing, but he explored IndyCar for a bit. He's taking ownership responsibilities. He's evolved, but this still feels real final. This feels like the last chapter being written on purpose. And what it meant for the sports is significant, right? For one, it signals a true generational shift. The drivers who grew up watching Johnson win titles are now the veterans. The grid looks different. The garage sounds different. The leadership dynamics have changed. It also shines a spotlight on Legacy Motor Club and the ownership role. Once he's done driving, the focus turns fully into building that organization, developing talent, shaping the future instead of competing in the present. But before we get there, we've still got another Daytona 500 with him on track. Another chance for a storybook moment. Can you imagine if he contends in the 2027 Daytona 500, if he's in the mix in the final restart, the 7-time champions fighting for one more crown jewel before walking away? That's the kind of storyline NASCAR can build an entire season around. Retirement tour will be emotional. Tributes will come. Throwback paint schemes will show up. But the biggest thing is we're watching the final laps of one of the greatest careers the sport has ever seen. So soak that in this year when you're watching, because the checker flag falls. Daytona 2027 won't just end a race, it'll close one of NASCAR's most dominant eras for good. And it's super sad, right? I mean, growing up watching him dominate, like I said, whether you liked him or not, he did his thing, he dominated and did a great job. And he's still on the ownership side, but it'll be crazy not seeing him on the grid anymore. We are going to shift this back to IndyCar a little bit. because we've got an important piece of competitive puzzle here to talk about. AJ Foyt Racing has confirmed it will remain aligned with Team Penske in a technical partnership through the 2027 season. So continuing out this current rule book with each other partnership-wise. While that might not sound like a huge headline, it actually becomes real heavy in the weight department because Foyt Racing isn't just sharing data, it's about relevance of all of it, what this partnership really means. For AJ Foyt Racing, staying competitive in modern IndyCar is no small task. Budgets are tighter than Formula One, but the technical demands are still massive. Engineering depth, simulation programs, damper development, hybrid integration, it all matters, right? Team Penske is one of the benchmark organizations for the series, championships with Indy 500 wins, everything else, consistent front-running pace. So by staying aligned with Penske, Foyt gains continued access to technical data, setup information, engineering collaboration, operational insight, the kind of support that can be the difference between running 18th and fighting for top 10s just on merit, right? So we've already seen signs in progress since partnership began. Over the last couple of seasons, Foyt's performance curve has noticeably improved. The cars look more stable. Pit execution has tightened up. Qualifying pace has become alive with the tracks they previously struggled in. That's not a coincidence, right? In a spec-heavy series like IndyCar, the margins are razor thin. Small setup gains translate into real track positioning, and track positioning at places like Road America or Mid-Ohio changes everything. Extending this alliance through 2027 also carries added importance because it spans the technical era of the series. With hybrid integration and future rule refinements on the horizon, having a stable technical foundation is critical. Foyt won't be scrambling to recalibrate relationships while the rest of the grid evolves. And this isn't so one-sided, right? So what does it mean for Penske? Well, for Team Penske, technical partnerships expand influence and data pools. More cars running similar philosophies means more information across different drivers, styles, and track conditions. That strengthens the overall Penske ecosystem. It also keeps a legendary name like AJ Foyt Racing connected to a modern competitive framework, which is also good for the series as a whole. Big picture here, AJ Foyt carries one of the most historic names in open wheel racing, but history alone doesn't score points. By locking the technical partnership through 2027, the team signals that it's serious about long-term competitiveness, not just survival. Stability matters in IndyCar right now, especially with the engine commitments secured from Honda and Chevrolet, and the next generation of development coming down the pipeline. This move says Foyt wants to be part of the future in a meaningful way, and in performance gains continues the way they've trended. This partnership might quietly become one of the smartest long-term plays in the paddock. Because in modern racing, collaboration isn't weakness, it's definitely strategy. So we'll see how it shakes out this year. We've noticed a lot of difference in the road course and oval programs for both teams since teaming up, and that's a good thing, right? All right, we've got one more piece to talk about, and we've got to do this one on a somber tone. George Barber has passed away. With him, motorsport loses one of the most important behind-the-scenes visionaries, really, in motorsports history. If you've ever watched a race from Barber Motorsports Park, if you've ever walked through the Barber Vintage Motorsports Museum, if you've ever admired how pristine that facility looks on television, you've seen his legacy, and it's a big one, right? The museum that started it all. Barber wasn't a former driver chasing nostalgia. He was a businessman with a deep love for motorcycles and racing history. In the 1990s, he began collecting motorcycles, not in a casual way, but in a serious way. That collection eventually became the Barber Vintage Motorsports Museum, which today houses more than 1,800 motorcycles and hundreds of vintage race cars. It's widely recognized as the largest motorcycle museum in the world. But here's the key. He didn't build it as a warehouse. He built it as a world-class destination. You're talking glass walls, multi-level displays, a museum that feels much more like an art gallery. You don't just walk through it, you experience it. And that attention to detail carried over to everything else he touched. In the late 1990s, Barber had a bold idea. Instead of attaching a museum to an existing racetrack, he built an entirely new motorsports facility around the museum. The result was Barber Motorsports Park, which opened in 2003. At that time, it felt almost improbable. European-style road course in Alabama with elevation change, flowing corners, pristine landscaping, and then sculptures scattered throughout the property. The track quickly earned a reputation as one of the most beautiful and technically challenging circuits in North America. It became a staple of motorcycle racing, including Moto America and previously MotoGP. It also became a key stop for IndyCar, hosting the annual spring race, and drivers consistently rank among their favorites to drive. Barber didn't just want a track to function, he wanted one that felt special, and the drivers definitely have noticed it. What George Barber did for motorsports wasn't about trophies or championship. It was about the infrastructure of it. He showed that a privately funded facility in the United States could meet, and in some ways exceed, standards. Clean paddocks, immaculate grounds, professional presentation. Teams love going there because it's organized. Fans love going there because it's welcoming. Podcasters love going there because it looks stunning on camera. That matters more than people realize. In an era where the motorsports venues sometimes struggle with aging facilities, Barber created something modern and lasting. Barber Motorsports Park brought major racing to Alabama. It generated tourism. It gave the Southeast a prominent road course destination at a high level. And the museum preserves history that might otherwise have been lost. That's the part that stands out the most. George Barber wasn't just funding racing events. He was protecting motorsports history, restoring it, displaying it, making sure future generations could see it, that the machines that built the sport continue to be recognized. And that's the work of a legacy. George Barber didn't strap into race cars. He didn't stand on podiums, but thousands of racers have competed because he built a place for them to race. Millions of fans have walked through his museum. Countless children have seen historic motorcycles up close because he decided they should be preserved properly. Motorsport needs drivers, it needs engineers, it needs teams, but it also needs people willing to invest in places. And George Barber gave his sport a home in Alabama that will outlive all of us. And every time engines fire up at Barber Motorsports Park, a piece of his vision definitely lives on. So we've got to say thank you to that, right? I mean, sad that we're here, but thank you, George Barber, for all that you did and have done for motorsports, and hopefully this legacy continues and lives on. All right, now for our favorite time of the episode, let's talk about some history. This week's history segment takes us back to the early days of Formula One, before onboard cameras, before carbon fiber, and back when cars slid, the circuits were lined with trees, and the risks were very, very real. This week we're going to talk about Alberto Ascari. If you know your F1 history, you know the headline: two-time world champion, Ferrari legend, one of the most naturally gifted drivers of the 1950s, but his story goes so much deeper than that. Ascari was born in Milan in 1918. Racing wasn't just a career option, it was a family business. His father, Antonio, was a top Grand Prix driver in the 1990s. He drove for Alfa Romeo and was considered one of the best of his era. In 1925, Antonio was killed while leading the French Grand Prix. Alberto was just 7 years old when this happened. This tragedy would follow him the rest of his life, and strangely, parts of his father's story would echo into his own. Ascari started in motorcycles before switching to cars in the 90s. World War II interrupted much of Europe's racing scene, but after the war, he quickly emerged as one of Italy's brightest talents. He began racing for Ferrari when the team was still building its reputation. Remember, Ferrari at that point was new to building its own cars. Enzo Ferrari was still shaping the identity of the team. Ascari became central to that identity. The Formula One World Championship officially began in 1950. Ferrari was competitive early, but it was 1952 and 1953 where he truly dominated. Driving the Ferrari 500, Ascari won 6 of 8 races in 1952 and 5 of 9 races in 1953. Across those 2 seasons, he won 9 consecutive World Championship races, a record that stood for decades. He secured back-to-back World Championships in 1952 and 1953. At that time, the level of dominance was definitely unheard of. And here's the thing, it wasn't chaotic dominance, it was clinical. Ascari was smooth, precise, methodical. He rarely overdrove the race car while others wrestled their machines. He seemed to guide them. He led 300 of 408 laps in 1952 alone. That's not winning on luck, that's control. To this day, he remains Ferrari's first true dominant champion in Formula One. But one of the most famous moments of Ascari's career came in Monaco in 1955. Driving for Lancia by then, he lost control at the harbor chicane and went straight into the water. Yes, right into the Mediterranean. The car sank. Ascari was thrown clear and rescued by divers. He escaped with minor injuries. It's one of the most surreal images in Formula One history. A champion driver swimming away from his car in the Monaco harbor. But what happened next makes the story even more chilling. Just 4 days after the Monaco crash, Ascari went to Monza to watch a friend test a Ferrari sports car. He wasn't scheduled to drive. He wasn't even fully suited. No helmet, no gloves. But in a spur-of-the-moment decision, he took the car out for just a few laps. On the 3rd lap, he lost control at the fast curve. The car flipped. Ascari was thrown out and killed instantly. He was 36 years old at the time. And here's where the eerie parallels come in. His father died at 36. Both died on the 26th of the month. Both were leading drivers of their era. In Italy, many considered the number 26 cursed to the Ascari family. But let's talk about the legacy. All that aside, 32 World Championship starts, 13 wins, 14 pole position, 12 fastest laps, 2 World Championship. Those numbers might look modest by modern standards, but context definitely matters here. He won nearly 41% of the races he started. That's elite in any kind of era. He was also the last Italian driver to win multiple Formula One World Championships for decades. His success became a benchmark for every Italian driver that followed. More than stats, though, Ascari represented something about early Grand Prix racing, precision in an era of chaos, calm in machines that demanded bravery every single lap. He helped establish Ferrari as a championship force. He set standards for consistency, and he became one of the most defining figures of Formula One's first decade. Alberto Ascari's career was brilliant and short. 2 championships, record streak, a harbor crash, and a tragic end just days later. He remains one of the sport's greatest what-if stories. What would he have done in the rear-engine revolution? How many more titles could he have won? We'll just never know, right? But for a few seasons in the early 1950s, Alberto Ascari wasn't just the best driver in Formula One, he was untouchable. That pretty much wraps it up for us this week. Talked about a lot in a short amount of time. Appreciate you sticking with it, listening to us all the way through if you have. Also, do us a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, follow us on all the socials, all that good stuff. We'll keep this coming. We've got a lot to talk about. I think we're going to do a breakdown next week of the IndyCar series and what we're looking like after the full test sessions. We'll break it down team by team. Maybe we'll do the same thing before the Formula One season kicks off in a few weeks, but either way, thanks for sticking with it. We appreciate it. Till next time, stay safe. Thanks for tuning in.